We're looking live at George Floyd Square in Minneapolis as we mark 1 year since his death.
When we think about all that has transpired in that year, George Floyd's death started a national conversation about social injustice. It impacted so many parts of our lives. Janae Norman has a closer look at how that one day in America has led to a national reckoning on so many fronts. Good morning, Janae.
Robin, good morning. 365 days ago, the country and the world, much of the world, saw what happened to George Floyd. Most of us were at home under lockdown. There were few distractions. We had to pay attention. And then countless people, so many people, all different kinds of people, felt that they had to act to make change any way they could. So we're taking a look at all the areas of society that change has seeped into. Last summer, the bedrock of our country began to shift as the George Floyd protests reverberated across the culture.
No aspect of American society was untouched.
Symbols of racism being torn down around the world.
They tear them down.
It was a domino effect.
And NASCAR bans the Confederate flag.
That's a symbol of hate.
The long-running series Cops and now Live PD being pulled from the airwaves.
Bye and good riddance.
Tonight, Washington's NFL team dropping the Redskins name and logo.
I'm happy that name is going to be eradicated.
It was the start of a racial reckoning so many of us never expected to see. In the midst of history, scholars like Elizabeth Alexander were charting out the future.
We began to think about what all of these Confederate monuments and buildings named for Confederate heroes, what is that teaching us? Plain and simple, that is teaching us to venerate white supremacy. That was a problem to address.
When you see the statue of Robert E. Lee and the images projected up on that statue, do you think that is a good use of that space, a reclaiming of sorts?
I feel it's ideal. I feel it's spectacular. In the face of George Floyd or Breonna Taylor, you see the ongoing cost if we continue to live in the way that this country's been living.
While much of our memorial landscape centers white men, artist Hank Willis Thomas is changing that with pieces like Unity here in downtown Brooklyn.
I've always thought about artists as kind of like psychics, where a lot of us are living in and imagining the world that we want to see and then going about building it.
His next project, The Embrace, will honor Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King.
He's hugging her, and you can see her literally holding him up, and this was something that was so special.
In the years since Floyd, the memorial landscape isn't the only thing getting a makeover.
Let me fix you some breakfast.
Aunt Jemima.
After a social media uproar sparked by singer-songwriter Kirby's TikTok video and the larger Floyd movement.
Did you know the name Aunt Jemima means slave mammy of the plantation South?
Aunt Jemima toppled.
Quaker now saying after 131 years, it is changing the name and packaging of Aunt Jemima, acknowledging the brand is based on a racial stereotype.
The brand, first introduced in 1889, is rooted in a 19th century minstrel song, Old Aunt Jemima, a stereotypical mammy caricature that falsely suggests the enslaved were happy. Obviously, her appearance has changed over the years, but when we look back, we still see that mammy caricature.
Yeah, the Aunt Jemima brand is based on a horrible racial stereotype. And over the course of the brand's history, there were attempts to evolve that image over time. And last June, on the wake of George Floyd, we made a statement that that Aunt Jemima brand needed to retire.
With all due respect, why did it take so long and a tragedy of such epic proportions to do the right thing?
These are complex questions because the brand has meant many things to many people over the course of history. It clearly was time to move beyond removing that harmful negative stereotype from the marketplace.
Aunt Jemima will now be named Pearl Milling Company. New packaging will hit shelves in June.
No justice, no peace.
The Floyd effect has even rippled through American schools.
We keep telling the same tragic story over and over.
Last summer, 12-year-old Abele Azikiwe wrote a letter to her principal asking to be taught more than just the basics of slavery and a few famous icons.
There are other people to teach us than Martin Luther King and Harriet Tubman that are important.
Ultimately, the Cherry Hill School District made Black history a high school graduation requirement.
I feel proud, and I don't want to stop, having these conversations.
Conversations across America. It's what Floyd sparked, a legacy that's still unfolding.
Maybe it'll be the kids of today that can really interpret this time. All I know is it's a different time. The temperature has changed in America.
So while any measure of progress is worth noting to see how far we've come from where we began, Boston Globe columnist Janae Osterholt wrote, "They sometimes call our dead martyrs. You cannot kill folk, call it sacrifice, and then party over progress on the anniversary of their deaths because we're still dying. People are still dying. So any progress in the last year hasn't changed that." Guys.
Well, Janae, that was a very thoughtful piece right there.
It really was. It makes you think, and Janae, I know how much time you spent on that. And people don't want this to be a moment. They want it to be a true movement, and there's a difference. And if we all are really honest with ourselves, when this happened a year ago, complete outrage. I heard from so many friends that look like you and you that I hadn't heard from in a while. And we're just racked with, hey, what are we going to do? And then it starts trickling back down to what it was before. So how do we maintain, sustain that? And because what that young woman said today is so true, it's about our history. And for people, not just for us, but for everyone to understand the history. Black history is American history. And you're only selected to know a little bit of it instead of the whole history.
And education is the key. So seeing what that young woman did in her school district, if that could carry on so other people get the information and the education that we're not getting, and we're not giving our kids.
We've all seen it with our kids, though. I mean, this conversation has been real for them.
Oh, yeah. It needs to start with the kids, the grassroots, and then it'll go generation to generation. But as long as it's just stuck with us as adults, it's only going to get filtered down to the kids in a very watered down way.
See, you got us talking.
Got to keep the conversation going. That's part of it, though. That's why a year later we're talking about it, and hopefully this isn't the end.
And you can see more. Thank you, Janae Norman. You can see more on After Floyd, the year that shook the world, a Soul of a Nation special. That's tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern here on ABC. Well, hey there, GMA fans. Robin Roberts here. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Lots of great stuff here. So go on, click the subscribe button right over here to get more of awesome videos and content from GMA every day, anytime. We thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the morning on GMA.